lastly, Ms. Al-Wafi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nina, and thank you to Professor Jowell and the Bingham Center for this very thoughtful and excellent resource, I think, for Libyans to consider their options. And for the record, I didn't think it was dry, Professor Jowell. But as you say, I think it's also very personal this time. And so, and as Hilham was saying, I think we need to make sure that all Libyans feel that way, and there's sufficient time for them to really engage in this process, because the process is probably as important as the outcome, if not more. I would agree and also disagree with some of the points that were raised, but as people said, it's very important that we're actually having this dialogue and this conversation. I was asked to speak tonight with my Women for Libya campaign hat on, or scarf, as the case may be. Just in very short, Women for Libya is a campaign that has aimed to lobby the Libyan government and international governments for better representation of women in institutions under their obligations under UN Security Council 1325, as well as other binding resolutions. We've been trying to raise the profile of Libyan women and their concerns, and to collaborate with activists and NGOs, which have, it's amazing in this revolution that there's so many, the spring of civil society that's really come forward. So you might be thinking, why women, why now? When there are urgent, pressing issues such as this task of drafting a constitution, setting up new institutions, securing the country, the border, arming the public, reestablishing services like education and health, and I mean, there's quite a lot now on the plate. But, I'll answer that question, as I said, because I've been asked to give the gender perspective, but I really wish I could participate under a campaign called People for Libya, or Humans for Libya. But unfortunately, and this isn't just specific to Libyan culture or Arabs, I mean, it's also applies to Western societies, but to a lesser extent, that oftentimes women's participation is confined to civil society or to the professional spheres or private spheres, when really they need to be integrated into the decision-making processes and institutions that are going to be establishing the new government and reestablishing the economic and political and social infrastructure for the country now and for the generations to come. And I think it'll be a great disservice to Libya if we underutilize half of the population's capacity and overlook, their concerns and views. I think a lot of you here are probably familiar with Libyans, but in case you aren't, Libyan women are very intelligent. They're represented across all sorts of fields and professions, and they're just roll over and not participate. So definitely and I remember speaking to an NTC representative, not Mr. Gamati, but someone else who, when I was trying to raise this issue to him, he said, yeah, no, we'll do it, because the West expects us to. And so it really isn't about box ticking or about trying to impress the West. It really is about making sure that we have inclusive and representative institutions and governments, because that was really a key driver of this revolution. Just really briefly, what does it mean to have gender-inclusive processes and gender-sensitive processes in, for example, drafting the Constitution or in running the elections? Just a few points to consider, because there are a lot, but just being alive to details that encourage and ensure women's participation. For example, accessibility to meetings, the timings of meetings, locations, the procedure, not taking it for granted that men are always going to be the, committee heads of committees, and also that women issues aren't just women considering, ensuring that involvement is across all regions, rural, urban, and it's not just the Tripoli or Benghazi elites or activists whose voices are heard. It's essential to address common obstacles to women's participation, which in all societies really, this is the case, but lack of money or resources, confidence. I know Women for Libya, when we've spoken to a lot of women's groups, we're really keen on getting involved in politics, but we just don't know how. We're just not confident. So can you try and run some workshops or some training to really give us that confidence and that information so that we can put ourselves forward when there's going to be an election process? Otherwise, I think women have just been more comfortable holding back in civil society. Also, it's important to consider political parties and the rules and culture that they're going to establish, because they're often the gatekeepers of putting forth candidates and encouraging candidates to come forward. There are different models and techniques to use. I know that the Liberal Democratic Party here in the UK has used a technique called the zip the zipper technique, which when actually listing out names on ballots, they alternate man, woman, rather than just starting off with and having a list of male candidates and then women. And that's been very successful in promoting more women candidates. Also, a very hot topic, and that I'm not going to go into detail, is the use of quotas. To have them, not to have them, what percentage? I mean, I think a lot of people have opinions about that. And already discussed careful references to customary and religious law, and the nuances in the drafting that Professor Zhao went to in detail in his paper, but using Islam as a source rather than the source, and how that can really make a huge impact in how certain rights and laws are translated and interpreted. That's it.